Hi babies! Welcome back to today's Scout Learns. Did you miss me? Glyphid Hiveguard. For those of you new to this series, we dive into the wiki and learn about all the different bugs in the Miner's Manual and come up with ways for new scouts and scouts who are learning or struggling scouts to see if we can come up with some quick and efficient ways of dispatching said bugs using the information in the wiki and using the knowledge that I've gained from my previous series, Road to Legendary 3 and Beyond Legendary 3, because I'm learning all the time too, and I'd like to pass that on to make the game easier for other scouts too. Okay. I do this without any overclocks, because not everybody have overclocks. So it's unfair to say, "Oh, I'll just put this overclock on and that's it, you're golden," because not everybody has that overclock. Not everybody watching will have it. So this way we build a good foundation. We come up with builds completely OC-less to deal with the various bugs, and hopefully it's of help to at least one person out there. If it's helpful to one person out there, I'm a little happy bunny. So with that said, let's dive right into the wiki. The Dreadnought Hiveguard is an interrupted progression in a Dreadnought metamorphosis. Currently, R&D is not in agreement on what the final form would be like, but everyone agrees that it is bad enough. True. Besides its own attacks, the Hiveguard is able to summon reinforcements to aid it in battle. Previously unknown to us, these new Glyphids have been dubbed the Sentinels, and they are very mobile and aggressive. The Hiveguard is slower than the basic Dreadnought, but it has even better survivability, exposing its vulnerable areas only occasionally, and being completely immune to damage at all other times. Engage with extreme caution and plenty of ammunition. Okay, the Miner's Manual is not too helpful there, but it does give you a hint. It exposes its vulnerable areas only occasionally. That is, after you kill the Sentinels. You have to kill the Sentinels and it'll expose its weak points. Let's see what the wiki has to say about it, shall we? It has a 1 in 3 chance to spawn when the Glyphid cocoon is broken in elimination, and a 1 in 2 chance for each subsequent cocoon. So if you have an elimination for 3 dreads, a 3 dread elimination mission, you can get it twice. It also has a rare chance to spawn in place of a swarm in mining, aquarks and refining missions. Okay, the Sentinels have similar stats and behaviour to the Glyphid Grunt Guard. They're not really tough. They're easily dispatched. They drop sticky goo when killed, which slows you down, similar to a Macterra Goo Bomber. This is countered easily by simply not going in it, or if you do go in it, the Unstoppable perk helps here. The Hiveguard itself will target one dwarf in particular, occasionally firing a mortar at them or slashing and biting if they get too close. So if the Hiveguard is on you and it's you're the one it's attacking, it's best to lead it away from the other players so they can deal with the Sentinels in peace. And if it's still on you when its weak points are exposed, it's best to just to turn it towards your teammates or to give your teammates an opening to get those weak points. Once its 3 glowing protrusions are exposed, it can fire 3 mortars in rapid succession. This is pretty easy to dodge. And it seems counterintuitive, but go forwards. Just sort of like sidestep and go forwards at the same time, slightly. It literally cannot aim at you this way. Once you've taken care of the 3 protrusions, it will expose its big weak point at the back, and it'll also do its stomp and big rock attack where it'll throw rocks at you. Again, these are kind of hard at first when you're new to the game, but if you watch them slowly, you can sort of dance and weave through them. They do become easier to dodge after time. Just take note that the more players there are in the game and the higher the difficulty, the faster the animations of these bugs are. so keep that in mind. But it's always nice to go down solo and just practice the pattern, and just remember to do it a little faster in higher games or with teammates. With its weak points exposed, the Hiveguard will still try to turn towards a dwarf again. So if it's on you, you should position yourself so its weak point will face your teammates, or an area where your teammates can get a nice clear shot at it. Don't try to get behind it if it's on you, because all you're going to do there is spin it around and then nobody can hit it. In solo, of course, you have to get behind it, and there are ways to do this which we'll go through later in demonstrations. Once you've done a substantial amount of damage, its weak point will close up and it'll spawn more sentinels, and the cycle begins all over again. The Hiveguard can slash and bite you along with its ranged attacks, and just like other dreadnoughts, it takes 2.5 times damage when frozen. We'll come to that a little later too in demonstrations. It's a bit of a chunky boy with 2,500 health base. This has 3, that goes up to 6,000 in a full team, or 8,500 on has 5. And the protrusions, while really weak, they do have a 50% resistance to AoE damage. Okay, so that's the wiki. So what did we learn there? Well, we learned the Hiveguard's a chunky boy, but it's not really its health that is the problem. We could deal with the health quite easily. It's the steps to get to that health, and in demonstrations I'll show you how to deal with that, how to deal with the protrusions and the weak point when it keeps spinning around, how to dodge its fire motors, and how to dodge its rocks, and what weapons to take to get its health down as quickly as possible. So what do you say we get to the fun stuff? Let's go to the drop pod, take our weapons with us, and try different combinations, see what we come up with. Oh, I'll see you in my new little training arena place thingy. This is a fantastic mod called Sandbox Utilities by Assembly Storm. So thank you very much, Assembly Storm, for creating Sandbox Utilities. It's a very helpful tool. It allows you to go down in a controlled environment, nice flat surface, nice open area, and it lets you practice against the enemies and see how they move and see what works and what doesn't against them. So if that's something you're interested in, I recommend taking a look at this mod for yourself. Okay, let's go. Ready to go. Okay, I've taken down the GK2 without OCs, of course. I've gone fire rate and damage. I've gone bolt shark with chem bolts. Again, without overclock, and cryo grenades. As you can see, the sentinels are no threat whatsoever. I'm electric bolting them out of habit, really, because on the GK I usually have bullets of mercy. Of course, I'm not getting the bullets of mercy proc on this because we don't have it. The stock bolt shock arrow is great for the protrusions. It only takes 1 to take them out. It saves you your GK ammo. Now, I'm going nice and slow here. I usually play faster than this, but I'm going nice and slow so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. Did you notice when the mortar fire starts, they're stationary? That's your chance to get round the side to take those protrusions without it spinning around. Using the 2 cryo grenades, you can freeze the Hiveguard for a precious few seconds to completely unload your GK2. That's why I've gone with fire rate over any of the other mods, because without OCs, more bullets, more damage. So, how about its flying rock phase? There's not much advice here other than practice. Just look at the ground, see the rocks are coming from. You'll be able to see the rocks, and over time you sort of predict where the rocks are going to fly, and you can weave yourself in them. This is literally just a case of practice and experience. Just keep your eye open. Don't turn your back on them, don't try to run away from them. You're actually better going forwards. Just don't get too close or its stomp will hit you. Okay, for those interested, here's the GK2 build I was using. As you can see, I've gone full fire rate. to turn it into sort of a, a poor man's BOM, if you like. We've got damage on there, weak point of course, and bigger magazine, so we can really unload on the Dread. It's mostly preference, but I find if you're going with the cryo grenade route to put out that big damage in those precious few seconds, this is the one that worked best for me without overclocks. Again, here's the taser bolt shark. Again, most of it is just preference, except the bottom magnetic shafts. We want that to put out extra damage from the tasers. I always like movement speed. Mobility and movement speed on scout is always good. Faster reload I always prefer to velocity. Velocities, I've never really needed this. Just aim further up, right? Of course damage, because with broadhead the stock, the vanilla bolt shark actually puts out some nice damage, 130 per bolt. That's pretty nice. Okay, that's GK2 with taser bolts, no OCs, along with cryo grenades. That's a pretty good setup for the Hiveguard, and it works really well with other dreads as well, especially against OG. So let's move on to the other weapons. How about the M1 Grand, Zukofs, and the good old IFG. Actually, before we move on to the Zukofs, let's go down with M1, AFG, and the Bolt Shark again, but this time with pheromones, and then I'll switch to Zukofs down in the caves. And here's what I wanted to show you quickly. A dread won't go after any pheromone bugs, but bugs will go after a pheromone dread, including its own sentinels. This is a great distraction tool. Okay, and here's the M1 setup as more of a poor man's hipster setup for hip fire. But that doesn't mean focus shots don't work at all. You can of course still focus shot the protrusions, which even built for hip fire takes them out with one shot. As you can see, the hipfire M1 cuts through sentinels as though they're not even there. I'm actually using the rapid fire button on my mouse here, so I may be firing just a tiny bit faster than you can with your finger. When going for the weak point, always keep an eye on the floor, keep an eye on those rocks, and maneuver through them. Before starting my YouTube, I was a hipster. I was a hipster scout. Hipster was my favourite overclock back in those days. So Hipfire M1 feels very much at home for me. I think it's a very good build for people who can actually aim. Unfortunately, I can't really aim. My aim's always been a bit goofy. I always pair it with FGs for that 30% damage boost. And of course, never be afraid to get stuck in with your pickaxe as well if you're stuck on a reload. Okay, so Hipfire M1, good. Not as good as the GK, especially paired with Cryo, but it'd be interesting to see Hipfire M1 with Cryo, wouldn't it? So, onto focus shots. I struggled to get this one to work for me. I find with the Sentinels and the Flying Rocks and the Mortars, you're just too slow. With the focus shots, or at least I am. Maybe you can get it to work for you, I don't know. I just find you're too slow. I actually got hit quite a few times trying to get this to work. I tried different modifications. I'd recommend, if you go focus shot M1, I'd wait until you get an active stability system overclock and try that for dreads. Personally, if I take the M1 on a dread missions these days, I take hoverclock, so I can grapple up into the air and use hoverclock to slow myself down on the way down and hit those weak points with the hoverclock. But I don't really take that much. If I do take it, I don't really take the M1 much these days, but if I do, I'll always go hipster or active stability system. If it's a team game, I may even take super cooling chamber and use it when the dread is focused on somebody else. And I think that's the key here. Focus shot M1. It'd probably be good in a team play, and then you can use it while the dread is distracted on somebody else. So it puts out some good damage inside that IFG. I just find it's too slow to be useful, at least for me. But you feel free to experiment and make your own mind up. The Zukos are a different story altogether. They performed really well. Nice fast gun. I like nice big magazines to unload on the Dread. Of course, always paired with AFG with conducive bullets. Okay, so let's take a look at the M1 builds used. This is the focus shot damage build, of course, damage because we're against Dreads, and of course focus dot, greater focus damage bonus, and faster focus mode, and of course weak spot bonus. I could not really get this to work for me. It is too slow for me, and as mentioned in the video, in a team game it'd probably be good when the Dread's facing somebody else, exposing its weak spot to you, but as in solo, no, I don't like this. It's too slow for me. I don't like it. I'd go sort of active stability system or hipster solo. Even hover clock would be good. And here's the Hipfire M1, which I much preferred. It felt much closer to home for me. Use hipster. My hipster build is pretty much the same, except I'd go armor breaking there. I no longer need this with hipster, but without hipster I went with improved hip shot accuracy and stability. We don't need focus damage bonus obviously because we're not using focus damage, but you can still focus shot. As you saw, one focus shot still takes the protrusion. Even with this, more clips in magazine is much better. It means you reload less. And then on tier 5 here, reload speed. I always like reload speed. This worked much better for me. I recommend if you go M1, you go for a hipfire build, but you're free to experiment yourself. Again, maybe you can get focus shots to work. Like I said, my aim's a little goofy, so maybe your aim is spot on and you can make it work better. But you notice in my video clip there seem to be like misfires. I mean, I'm pretty sure I hit it on target, but it just wasn't registering. Focus shots can be a bit funky like that sometimes, I find. The Zukofs were great. The Zukofs are always great though. But since the Bolt Shock, these have been on the back burner for me. It's why you never really see me use them in any of my videos. Don't really find much use to them. They're a gun to use if you want to use them, but you never really need to use them, if you get what I mean. The only time I use them really is if I'm taking cryo minelets on Swarmageddon, or if I'm taking embed debts for escort mission. So let's have a look at the build choice here. Damage, of course. You don't really need ammo bags. I mean, look, you've got 650 bullets. You get plenty of ammo with it. Fire rate, because we want to unload as fast as possible on the Dread. I mean, you can fire it a little slower with more in a mag, but you're only getting 10 more in the. If you see, can you see there? You're only getting 10 more, and the rate of fire, you're only losing 8. Overall damage, I mean, accuracy is a good one to take, but with the Dreads and using the Zukofs, you tend to be up close. So you don't really need this against Dreads. That's why I haven't taken this and gone with increased damage. Weak spot, of course, we're against Dreads, and conductive bullets, because we had the IFG. So we've got more damage because of this inside the IFG, on top of IFG's 30% damage for the rest of it. If I wasn't taking IFG, I'd probably go movement speed. You know, I like my movement speed, but with IFG I always go with conductive bullets because the damage bonus is too sweet to pass up. Okay, we're down to our final two, the Drac and the Boomstick. My favourites, though the Boomstick's pretty much my third favourite now. I'm very much a Bolt Shock enjoyer these days, but the Drac will always be king number 1 to me. But how does it perform against the Hiveguard? And I take down with me, of course, Boomerang! So I'm going to lob a Boomerang at the Dread here just to show you that it doesn't work against Dreads. Now, most of you probably already know this. There may be some of you watching who are brand new to the game. Boomerangs do not work against the Dreads, however it does work against Hiveguard's Sentinels. I'm using double trigger on the Boomstick. I love double trigger. You don't have to go to the weak spot at their back if the sentinels aren't distracted or stunned. Just give them a blast in the mouth. As expected, the jackmates liked work of the sentinels.
Burst just like an overripe tomato.
Taking a boomstick is great to keep as a sidearm for those protrusions, keeping your main weapon for its weak spot. But as you noticed on that last one, I like to keep a couple in the boomstick's tank, so to speak, just to give it a good blast and then switch to the main quickly and hit the weak spot. And the reason I do this is with the boomstick, you've got the blast wave mod, which increases damage to anything within 4 meters in front of you, and as you should have probably learned from the series before, we're against dreads, and when we're at that weak spot, when we're up its ass, we are within the 4 meters. Okay, so here's the no OC Drek build for elimination. See what we've got here. We have rate of fire, of course. I always carry. I think this is on pretty much every single one of my builds, except thermal exhaust, which I go this one. For most of my builds, I always go rate of fire. Damage, of course. I mean, with the Drek, look at the battery capacity. It's a monster. You do get 200 extra with that, but you also lose quite a bit of direct damage, and the direct damage on the Drek isn't great base as it is. I go cooling on tier 3 for the same reasons as I said on the Zucks. We don't really need accuracy because they're not that far away. We're quite close to the dreads. We want to be up its bum bum. So I go cooling rate, so when you're not firing, your gun cools faster, and you can let loose again sooner. Splash damage, dreads are immune to electrocution. I love PCF. PCF is my favourite. I usually take this on almost every single build. Splash damage is great against dreads and the caretaker. And thermal feedback, because your gun even fires even faster than once it's over 50%. If you notice what I do a lot, I like to shoot until it goes up to 99% and then wait until it goes down to 50% and then keep shooting again. I like to keep it between that 50 and 90% heat, so I'm always getting top fire rate. More bullets, more damage. What about a Hiveguard boomstick? Well, we have here damage, though you have to be really economical with your shots with this. What I usually do is I save this for the sentinels and for the Hiveguard's protrusions, and use my main weapon on its weak spot. Usually I give it a couple of blasts before switching to my main, but I don't use it as sort of my main weapon. Double trigger, of course. Extra pellets, because we're against the dread. We want those extra pellets, we want that extra damage. Ammo bags is good. I mean, look how much more ammo you get. It's massive. This is especially helpful if you go special powder, but you don't really need it if you're using it just as a dread blaster. Improved blast wave. This is one of my favourite modifications, and I don't know many other people who actually use it. I do, on this sort of against the dreads. Otherwise I go blow through, which is where the pellets come in handy the most. But for dreads, blast wave, because you're always within 4 meters of a dread when you're going up its ass with a shotgun. And I go fire damage, mostly just for the sentinels and other bugs. But a nice bit of fire damage is always good. The only time you wouldn't go double trigger really is if you sort of take double barrel. Then you can go the faster reload. But I always take double trigger. The base damage here, 15. Well, with double trigger, you're putting out 30. 30 in one shot. Boop! Okay, oof, that was a long one. I am pooped. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's at least been of help to somebody. Now you know the Hiveguard, you know how to dodge its attacks, you know a few tips and tricks with weapons, and you've got a few build ideas to build upon yourself. Feel free to experiment, use them, slot in any overclocks that you do have, just slot them in, and use the information given to you to tweak the modifications. Often when you add an overclock, it only takes 1 or 2 tweaks of the modifications to get it to work for you. I'd love to hear from you in the future in the comments about what's worked for you and what didn't. What do I personally think the best and most efficient way out of all those? My elimination build is the same as my cryo build. Put it that way. GK2 and cryo grenade definitely is the way to go for me. But hipfire M1 definitely. Drac, I love the Drac, but it loses out a little to the GK on this one. But you should experiment. You should experiment and find your own way. Yes, how about hipfire M1 with cryo grenade, or the Drac with IFG? Okay, my babies, I'm going to have a smart scout, smart stout, smart stout makes a smart scout, and have some sandwiches if they've removed that damn lithophage from the refrigerator. I'll see you in the next one, babies. I'll probably do another scout builds over explained as something. I'm not quite sure how I'm doing it. I don't want to do like sort of 2 bestialities in a row. I want to mix it up. Thank you to my lovely patrons, Kosmo and King Staxx. I very much appreciate you. Oh God, I'm sleepy now. Jeez, I've been at this a few hours. Okay, like and subscribe and all that jazz. Bye bye. Zippity!